Hello, I am Disbrew, and we've just got more information about DrDisrespect's new game, and, yeah, it's got NFTs in it. Now, this isn't exactly a surprise, he has mentioned it in the past. In fact, the first time he actually announced he was adding NFTs into his game, he didn't seem thrilled about the experience. In fact, it seemed almost as if he was being pressured into it.
Can't wait for the doc. We see Doc's game during Gamescom, maybe 2023, says Trevor. We've been thinking about a lot. I mean, what's a really big thing that's happening? Got some things. Like NFTs, cryptos,
PS5, PS4, and Epic
designed into the infrastructure of the game and the revenue system. How players can have equity, creators can have potential equity in the project as well.
Although the second time he actually came out and announced that his game was going to have NFTs in it, he put on a lot better show.
When are you going to drop a VSM-approved NFT for the Champions Club? Why just one NFT? How about multiple NFTs? A collection, if you will. I'll go into any more details, but the collection surrounding a particular studio, game development industry that surrounds itself with violence, speed, and momentum.
It's understandable that anyone would be hesitant to announce that their game had NFTs in it, given the reaction that's been almost universal to every game that's come out and said they've got them so far, but DrDisrespect in his name does carry weight, so if anyone can pull it off, it probably is the Doc, and that's how we end up here, that DrDisrespect launches Founders Pass NFTs with early access to the Midnight Society game, and that isn't all they've got. They come with not just the normal sort of random distributed skins that you've got, but also other key features in the game that we'll get into a bit later. Because the Dark has teased an arena takeover event for Midnight Society set on the March the 15th, and we now know that there will be 10,000 unique profile pictures, which will be the initial NFTs, which then also give you early access and other benefits later in the game. These NFTs will also be based on the Polygon network, so they won't have the associated costs of Ethereum, nor any of the sort of proof of work environmental effects, if that's important to you. Costing $50 each at first, the randomized profiles will come from rare or super rare, and they'll have different armor, weapons, and backgrounds on them. And once you own them, obviously, because this is NFTs, the entire point is that you own them, not anyone else. But there is a lot more information over on the Midnight Society website here, which details everything about the launch, and you can also, if you click start here, they're doing some kind of free NFT bonus pass for the game, just so it's like day zero, you were here when it all launched kind of event. And this is free, whereas the Founders Packs, they have a whole different method of getting control of them. And you can find that on this page. Now, it does go through the various different things. I think the art looks amazing. They've got a sort of cybernetic ninja kind of style to it. I think it looks really cool myself. But it goes on to explain what the Founders Pass actually has. When you mint a Founders Pass, you'll also mint a profile picture. This represents you from now into the future, and it go from rare to super rare, armors, weapons, backgrounds, and more. So presumably you get this or some kind of random generated version of these, different colors and everything else. You don't get to choose what you play as. It's all randomly determined for you. And the Founders Pass owners also get first dibs on actually minting their new avatars, as it says here. Now, it goes on to the benefits, and I have to say the way they've done it, the more things they add to it, the more dubious I am of the entire system, and I'll get into a bit why. You get a one-of-a-kind call sign, early access to different weapon tests and game builds, then you get voting rights on the various different game features. Honestly, I'm not sure how giving random people voting rights on your game is necessarily a good decision. I mean, normally you play a game because you trust the developers to make it. I'm not sure I trust Joe Bloggs down the road to actually come up with be a game designer. It seems a little bit weird. That's very determined by how they implement that. Perhaps they just have several features that they want to put in all of them, and they're just not sure which should take priority, and so they allow you to vote which one should be put in first. I can see that working. Exclusive access to studio events, first dibs on merchandise, and also early access to industry guilds. And these guilds, from what it says, is essentially an overarching clan system, which then controls all the manufacturing of the weapons, the armor, and everything else, which seems incredibly in-depth, but also putting a hell of a lot of power into a few people's hands. And I have to say, I'm kind of leaning on the side of everything should be cosmetic. And I'm not sure how enabling only certain people to control the manufacture of weapons could end up balanced. But again, it depends on the implementation, and there's so little information here. It could really go either way. I think there's definitely good ways and bad ways to implement that, because that sounds like a system that could either be really predatory or just isn't an issue at all, so it just depends on the implementation. But one of the interesting parts is when they say all of the 10,000 Founders Passes will have to be individually approved, and then we find out how you actually approve them, so how can you get hold of one yourself? And it says applications will be reviewed by the Midnight Society with a focus on identifying the claws in our community, with a vision for how they'd participate as a Founders Pass holder. Applications will be judged on a number of criteria, including, but not limited to, when you join the Midnight Society community, how active you've been in the community, how active of a gamer or creator or developer you are in general, and your insight into how variants should participate in the Midnight Society. During the approval process, priority will be given to active Day Zero members. And in this section, they talk about approval is based on a detailed scoring system which help us identify our most dedicated long-term community members who are active members of the gaming community in various ways. As a player, as an athlete, as a developer, and or as a content creator. And honestly, I really hope that this is going to members of the community which have been subscribed for a long time and active in the chat and all that kind of stuff. And I hope that the lion's share of the Founders Passes actually go to that. I can understand content creators getting some of them, obviously, that is all part of the marketing of the game. But I do think that given how this is worded, I'd really like it to go to the people which are actually there the longest and have been part of his actual clan, supporting him so that when his game comes out, he actually gives them something back and they can actually take part in the game. I think that'd be fair and reasonable. And I think that's my opinion on the game and NFTs in general. To me, it's not a good or a bad thing on its own. It really depends on the implementation. Now, I do think linking NFTs to JPEGs is probably the most insane way they could have launched them, because that's all anyone thinks of, and it's overall largely useless. But when it comes to owning digital property, like a way for you to trade your digital games or items in a game, or something like Steam cards which have been bought and sold since the beginning of time, then I think that becomes an entirely different issue, and it simply becomes a way of verifying ownership of digital property rather than a JPEG. And to me, that makes a lot more sense. And once it's done in that way, you end up with the fact of, it's not the NFTs themselves which are stupid or predatory, it's the people behind them and how they implement them. And that's where I end up with this. I love Doc, I think he's my favorite gaming streamer, but he is working with another company, and from there, it just comes down to how they implement them in the game. If they come up with a system where it's entirely optional, it's just cosmetic, and it doesn't have any influence on you when you play the game, and it's a good game, then I do think there's some kind of free-to-play economy you can have there, where they just produce a lot of skins, or they get the community to produce skins, and then you could even split some of the actual, every time those skins are sold, you know, the designer gets a fee, they get a fee, and the owner of the skin gets the lion's share of the cost. I think there's an economy you can build out of that, and everyone else can just play the game, and if they don't want to involve themselves in the NFT skin market, then they don't have to. I don't really see anything wrong with that. But there's also a lot of predatory tactics that you can actually do when you start to involve NFTs in your system. And we don't really have any information about this to judge either way, and so I'm going to withhold judgment. It's just, there are some things that I'm curious or cautious about, especially when it comes to actually running clans which manufacture weapons and armor in the game. That's something that could really go either way depending on how they build it. But given the general sentiment to NFTs in the gaming space, this was a brave move to actually come out with them in the first place, and I can absolutely see why he was very cautious when he first announced them all those months ago. And in fact, announcing at that time will definitely take some of the sting out of it now, as well as people, I think, generally having a high opinion about Doc in the gaming space to begin with. So, you know, he's going to get a very different attitude, him announcing it, than someone like EA or Activision. But even with that, I do think that this could go either way, and we'll really have to wait until we get the exact details of how they're implemented before we can make any firm decisions one way or the other. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Are you okay with NFTs? Do you think they can have a space in this, or are you just completely against them and absolutely want them out of everything? even when the dark's involved. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, but for now, that's it from me. I'll see you in the next one. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe, more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.